Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to today's webcast, Personalization, Where It Matters Most and Why You Should Care, brought to you by Autopilot. I'm Wendy Schuchert. I'm an editor at VentureBeat, and I'll be your moderator today. Now, we have just a few announcements before we begin. First, this webinar contains audience polling. Complete the polls when they appear and hit the submit button. We also ask you to disable your pop-up blockers if you have them. That will interfere with your ability to participate in the votes. And we thank you in advance for your participation in this poll. The slides are going to advance automatically throughout the event. You can also download a copy of the slides by clicking the attachments window under the right above the video window. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our help guide by clicking on the help link inside the Rate This box. And you can also participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during this webinar. Just type your question into the Ask a Question text area by clicking the Ask a Question button above the video window. At this time, we also recommend, again, disable your pop-up blockers. That will interfere with your ability to ask a question as well. And now on to the main event. Discussing today's topic is Stewart Rogers. He's an insight analyst at VentureBeat. We also have on the line with us Talia Wolf, the CEO of Conversioner, and Sam Wolf, the founder and general manager of Lucky Vitamin. And the two wolves are not related, just happen to be both wolves on the call. And with that, Stewart, I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Wendy. I'm a little bit unhappy that my surname isn't Wolf. We could have had a pack of wolves, but never mind. We'll push through that. So welcome, everybody. Great to have you here on another VB webinar. It is, of course, hashtag VB webinars if you want to also get involved in the conversation online. So we're going to be talking about personalization today, but we're going to be talking about it from a different perspective. We're going to be looking, first of all, at some research that we've done recently on VB Insight, and that will set the scene for the entire webinar. We're then going to ask questions throughout the webinar of our brilliant experts that have joined us today, and I'd like to just take a moment to thank them for being with us today. We'll talk more about who they are and what they do in a short moment. Now, VB Insight is the research arm of VentureBeat. We do an awful lot of research studies and analysis, pretty laser-focused on marketing technology, and we do it from the point of view of being completely data-driven. We don't spend a lot of time, 6-month, year-long periods interviewing a few of the Fortune 500 companies to try and ascertain what's going on. What we do instead is we will survey hundreds, sometimes thousands of users of certain marketing technology tools, and we'll grab huge slices of big data. In one study, I grabbed results of web scraping of 3.1 million websites. In another, John Coetzee grabbed 18 billion ad impressions. And Andrew Jones has worked on this fantastic report called Marketing Personalization, Maximizing Relevance and Revenue. He interviewed a whole swathe of vendors. He surveyed over 500 marketers, and he grabbed big slices of data to understand exactly what's happening in personalized marketing. And he came to some really amazing conclusions. We're going to discuss some of those conclusions in today's webinar, and every attendee is going to get the access to this report without charge as part of this as well. So if you're attending today, or if you're watching on demand after, you can count yourself incredibly lucky. It's a $299 value that we're giving you for being part of the webinar today, so hope you enjoy that too. So let's get into some of the data, and then let's get into the first sort of question that we're going to put out to our experts today. I wanted to preface this with a quote from Dale Carnegie. Hopefully you know who Dale Carnegie is, and of course, famously the author of How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said that remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And, read the rest of the quote at your leisure there, but Dale Carnegie is absolutely right. We love to hear our own name. Of course, in personalization in marketing, name is one of the things that we ask for very, very early on. In fact, if we look at the identity-related data used for personalization, here's what Andrew found in his study. He found that most of marketers had email addresses 57% use email addresses as the most common identity-related data point. Name is second. Interestingly, location comes third. Location and location data in personalized marketing is becoming more and more prevalent. And it's very interesting to understand where we're going from the point of view of location-based marketing personalization. There are other data sources such as demographics like age and date of birth. And then, of course, you go all the way down the line, all the way through IP addresses and into social data like Facebook and Twitter and elsewhere. So when we think about that, we look at the identity funnel. We start from the point of view where we have anonymous visitors. And when you're anonymous, we might have your IP address. It's quite common in marketing automation solutions for you to be able to see the IP address of the person that is visiting your website right now. And many marketing automation solutions will then turn that into a suggested company that might be visiting your website right now. Of course, if Microsoft is looking at your website right now, then that is an awful lot of employees. And even with a location, it's going to be difficult to understand who that is. What's interesting as you go from anonymous to known is that things like user agent and browser fingerprinting are a lot more accurate than you'd expect. If we look at, for example, and Andrew did the research on this, the different things that are attached to your browser, all the different plugins, add-ons, extensions, the language, the IP address, and everything else that you've got in there, it actually gets you down to around about a 1 in 5 million chance of anyone else actually having that anywhere in the world, that combination. And against a world population of billions, that's pretty impressive. You then have things like device IDs and cookies, of course, and social IDs, all the way through to the email address, e-commerce transactions, and post-transaction data, to the point where we now know who you are absolutely categorically. And that's quite interesting because we're still not doing it right. Here's a quote from Bill Veronka, former VP of Marketing at Janrain. A friend of mine gets Christian mingle ads, he said, even though he's Jewish and married. That shouldn't happen. His religion and marital status are available on Facebook. So we're in a situation where we do a lot of personalization, but we're not necessarily doing it very well. If we think about the lowest common denominator, just personalizing email, and if we look at the data from Experian Marketing Services here, they looked at, in Q1 for 2015, personalized subject lines, and they looked at the lifts in open rates in putting just a name in a subject line. What they found is across all industries, that lift was 29.3% on average. In consumer products and services and in travel, those lifts are over 40% just by putting a name in a subject line. That's pretty outstanding, but it's also pretty basic. So, let's get into the first question for Talia and Sam. Why do we react so positively towards basic personalization, such as just a name in a subject line? What is that all about? Why is it so important to us? Talia, I'll push this out to you first. If you want to chip in, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it all boils down at the end of the day to probably 3 different things. One is going to be trust, which is we really, we're exposed to so much data in our everyday lives, and we really want to feel we can trust the people that are sending us information. So we definitely want to make sure that the stuff that we're getting and the information that we're getting is trustworthy and we can take the next steps with it. So when we see our name in an email, or whether it's on a landing page or wherever we land, we're always feeling as if this person knows us a bit better and we can trust them. And there's a few other aspects to it. There's also the idea of information overload. So how do you actually decide on what information do you take in? We get hundreds of emails every week. How do we decide? So when you see an email with your name in it, and I'm only kind of talking about the name right now, but when you see an email with your name in it, you're definitely thinking, oh, okay, this is something that's directed to me personally, even though probably in your mind it wasn't, personalized specifically for you. It helps you kind of avoid information overload. And then it also gives you the sense of control, because you feel, even though this isn't true, but you feel that you have control on the information that you are taking in. And at the end of the day, it all kind of boils down to emotional targeting. It all kind of boils down to the emotional reason and why we actually make decisions in life, because we definitely like to think of ourselves as rational people who weigh the different consequences and think about, oh, here are the pros, here are the cons, I've made a rational decision. But in fact, our decisions are really based on different emotional triggers, and when these triggers are triggered, it helps us make a decision. So when we feel trust, when we feel that someone is reaching out to us personally, we feel that we can take the next step. And I think that's probably the general and the biggest reason why people react so nicely and so well to personalization, even if it's just your name.
That's really interesting. I'm going to put the same question to Sam. I just want to remind the audience that at any time you can hit the questions button and ask a question. We'll be answering the questions later on in a general Q&A session. Sam, what's your perspective on basic personalization and how we react to that?
Sure. Well, I think when you think about personalization, you're really talking about driving relevance. So if you personalize something to be relevant to an individual, whether that's a consumer, a browser, a visitor, or just a friend, you're ultimately going to drive engagement. So with relevance comes engagement, and that's sort of I think the first barrier. If you can show somebody something that they can resonate with, that is relevant to them on an emotional level, as Talia touched on, or just a personal level, or something that they have a personal relationship with, you're going to get them to engage. And once you've got engagement, that's the first big thing. That the next step, really, that's whether that's a click to a next page or a subscription or ultimately a purchase, depending on what your business is. Hitting that first chord of relevance, I think, is what drives that positive reaction and ultimately why everyone sees personalization work so well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of you, of course. I've seen, the sort of hard facts and data behind this myself. I also did a report on personalization to go in line with Andrew's. Mine was less on the vendors and how to use, personalization tools, and more on consumer attitudes towards personalization. And, what was clear to me is that, people love to have their name in emails. I think we'll talk a little bit more about channels later, but I tend to find that it's a different situation when you use the name across different channels. Email, I think, has that history now, whereby if we put a name inside an email address, a name inside an email, it's kind of expected at this point. In fact, if we don't put a name in the email, psychologically, we immediately think of that as potential spam because it doesn't have my name in it. Whereas if we're putting something out there on what might be perceived as a public network, something like Facebook, with a retargeting ad in the sidebar on the right-hand side, and we use a name there, that's a completely different situation, isn't it, Talia? That's putting my name in what might be perceived as a public space actually causes a different reaction. Can you talk a little bit more about the differences there? It's really just the name, right?
Yeah, I was actually, while you were talking, I was also thinking about another thing, which is maybe also a tip for you guys. When I started out with my emailing list for Conversioner, obviously I didn't have the names of everyone, but I did want to personalize it. And one thing that I found when I tested this, and I've been testing it ever since, is even the name of who is sending it. So sometimes you'll have, okay, this is Stewart Rogers, just as the person who sent the email, or Stewart Rogers from VentureBeat. And I found that the fact that you even personalize that and it says Talia from Conversion on my email has brought to an even larger uplift in open rates, just because, oh, it's Talia from Conversioner. Oh, I remember her. So it's even like this small little trigger that just makes me remember who this person is and why I'm connected to them, and it's not a random person appearing in my inbox. So I have a connection to the name. And as you said, within Facebook, when it comes to personalization in general, you really have to know where to use it. And maybe we can talk about that a little later into the webinar, but you really want to know which mediums you're using it in and how, because as you said, when you're using it in a public area, one of the most intimidating things is thinking that your entire information is out there. I've just flown in back from Vancouver today, and if you actually look for the flight number from my Google, from Google on my browser, it says Talia Wolf, the date and the name of, the number of the flight and all my information. That's really, really creepy. And it says there in small grey letters, this information can only be viewed by you. But they had to say that because, it's personalized. It says Talia Wolf, number of flight, when it's taking off, but that might be a bit too much, So it's really kind of treading and knowing when to use personalization, where to use it.
Yeah, and those different channels are quite interesting, right, Sam? I mean, there are channels that are actually private but are perceived as public, like Facebook. I mean, what other good examples have you come across of, just using basic personalization but using it in the wrong place?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be mindful to where you're personalizing and how you're personalizing. So, I mean, in our business, that even comes down to, we personalize some product recommendations, and when we do those on our own site, we can be a little more lenient with how we think about making those recommendations. When we're doing them through partnerships with third parties, you really have to be a lot more mindful to make sure that the recommendations are maybe more broad and more general, because you don't want to offend somebody personally, and you don't want to show them something that they might feel is exposed publicly in a place they don't want it. So, I think there's also a lot of different levels of technical aptitude among people who understand how some of the personalization is working out there. So, where the name might be personalized on an ad, you have to be mindful that although you know that it's only showing to that specific person, the end consumer doesn't always have that same level of technical understanding and could interpret it as, wow, my name is in an ad that's being shown to how many people across the internet. So, I think those are obviously risks, and whenever you engage in doing any kind of personalization, you have to weigh that and think about all the scenarios, and then you do run the risk that sometimes it doesn't always go exactly as you planned, and I think we've all seen that in the past.
Yes, there's been some pretty high-profile examples of that. We're not going to dwell too much on those today, especially some of the really old ones, but they are pretty obvious and always get the news going. So let's dig into some of the data a little bit more. We talked about previously not doing personalization really that well at the moment. I think, in Andrew's data, he found that in his ID unification report and data for unification report that actually 80% of marketers he studied weren't confident that they were able to hold the information necessary to do personalization in the first place. Data collection, 80% of consumer-facing companies don't really understand their customers beyond basic demographics and purchase history. And that's, one part of data unification. On the other side, 96% of marketers are saying that building a comprehensive single view of customers is a challenge. So it's not easy stuff, and that's something that we have to get across. I mean, there are a lot of vendors out there that are willing to help with personalization, and right now they're needed because marketers are finding this particularly difficult beyond the sort of data you might hold in a CRM or e-commerce system. But it's actually not that difficult to get beyond certain pieces of data. And what I found in my study when I asked consumers specifically, what is required to gain an email address from them? Email addresses, you might consider them as being quite personal. And what I found was that whilst 42% said that they wanted guarantees of something, guarantees of a coupon, guarantees of a discount, even just guarantees of personalization, 32% said they don't want nothing. They want nothing in return for their email address. They're quite happy to just give it to you. The worst result was where you just gave promises. So if you said on your website or in your sign-up form, wherever that may be, if you give us your email address, you may get discounts or the promise of something. That was the weakest of all the results. So it turns out that either guarantee people something or don't offer them anything at all, and that is more likely to get you the email address as a starter. From there, of course, then you have to use it responsibly. But what's quite interesting is that when we dug into the data further, we found that age made a big difference in terms of what people expect after they've given you that information. And 77.5% of digital natives now expect a personalized website experience. So once they've given you their data based on either nothing or a guarantee, they're expecting that personalization now, and not just in emails, but on the websites too. That's quite a level of advancement for a lot of marketers who are having this trouble in even putting everything together on their side, on the back end, in order to be able to do this website personalization in the first place. So, let's take a look at, because I don't want it to all be doom and gloom, where people are doing it well and the kind of results they're getting. Iron Mountain, for example, they used personalized content and they used it on their website. And the net result is that on their healthcare division, they saw a 120% increase in page views. And on the financial services division, it was 115%. And their total conversion rate increase in using personalized website content was 219%. Similarly, in a study that I did on conversion rate optimization tools, I surveyed over 3,000 CRO tool users, and the average return on investment from those users was over 240%. 5% of those users were getting over 1,000% increases in their conversion rates. And a lot of conversion rate optimization, of course, is intrinsically linked to personalization. You're segmenting or hyper-segmenting down to segments of very small consumers, very small customers, even down to one-to-one personalization, and giving them exactly what they want to see on the website. So the results are definitely there. What I wonder is, personalization has been very much basic to this point. Marketers are finding it difficult to do. They're finding it difficult to get that job done effectively and well. So basic personalization has been with us for a while. We talked about email. It's really popular. It's really prevalent. How will website personalization and other advanced personalization techniques change the general acceptance of personalized marketing in the same way that email is now just part of our lives? Maybe throw that out to Sam straight away.
Yeah, I think people generally expect a more personalized experience now, and that expectation is growing whether they know it or not. Again, I think it does come back to that relevance point I made earlier. And really, when you can personalize anything, whether that is on-site or through email or off-site, again, you're getting the relevance up. So, ultimately, we put a lot of time and energy into how we can optimize and have the best consumer shopping experience. And I think a lot of that ties into personalizing that experience as much as you can on a one-to-one basis. And it's not always, it's often not possible to get down to a one-to-one, giving every individual customer, their own unique experience. But what you can do is you can find similarities. You can find commonalities between different group segments, using a lot of the data points you touched on earlier, and using that data and through different tools, find areas where you can find common groupings, and then see what works within those groups and personalize to groups. So I think the approach is probably to start at the higher level. Find the bigger areas to optimize, and then you start to personalize those segments. So in my mind, for consumers and for browsers of sites, the more and more you see this happening across the web, the more you see whether it's an algorithm that's powering a news feed and making that content more relevant, the more the expectation grows that when they go from one site to another, that what they're going to see on those landing pages is going to resonate with them. So I think it sort of begins to set a standard, and that standard is ultimately going to probably drive more around what I guess I would consider general acceptance of personalization.
Do you agree with that, Talia? And what's the sort of psychology behind that?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with what Sam was saying, and I think that it's even more important, taking the next step in mobile, because there's so much traffic coming to mobile websites. Most mobile websites are not yet kind of ready for conversion optimization, and even though there's more traffic going to mobile, people still don't know how to convert on mobile, and they're seeing less and less conversion rates there. And personalization is such a great way to do it, because you can use it for so many things, and it can help kind of shorten the funnel for you, and B, obviously personalize it for people, because people are expecting to do that. So whether it's kind of, we were talking before about the name, but personalization is not just in the name. You can identify where a person is coming from and deliver a better experience. You can help them locate a store that's close to them. And you can even identify if someone is on Wi-Fi or if they're on the move. And that is really helpful, because if they're on Wi-Fi, you want to deliver one, a specific personalization. If they're on their move, their phone is moving slower, and you want to deliver a different kind of user journey. So mobile personalization, I think, is at the top of the top, and it really is the next place, and I think is the most important place to utilize it, because it really will increase conversion rates, and I've seen it in many case studies. In terms of the psychological part of it, I think, and I think I spoke about this with you a while ago, Stewart, is that when it comes to personalization, yes, we expect it, we want it, and as Sam said, even if we're not really aware of it, we want it. But we are walking a fine line, and you do want to kind of be careful with how much personalization you give, because at the end of the day, people will be, at some point, they'll just be oblivious to it. They'll just kind of, turn it off. And it's a lot like social proof today, when people try and put as much social proof on their website, and at some point you're just kind of blind to it already, because everyone's saying, or featured in, these are our clients, used by, or whatever. So it has to be this kind of balance to it.
Yeah, and there's a couple of points there. I've seen the mobile personalization you were talking about right there. Location is a big deal. Whilst consumers told me in my study that location is, current location is the one thing they were slightly edgy on when it comes to personalized marketing. It was, really sort of 0.1% worse than, using their name or, using other pieces of personally identifiable information. Really, they're quite comfortable with a lot of this information being used. But I've seen it for myself. I've seen launches on my Android device, for example. On Android, you don't have to stick with the standard launcher. You can download all sorts of, hundreds of thousands of different launchers if you want to personalize your experience on Android. And there are several that change the launcher based upon what you're doing. Aviate by Yahoo is one. Everything Me is another. So, for example, when I drive down to town, it knows that I've just driven, and so front and center, it puts the parking app straight in front of me, because it knows I'm going to use the parking app next to start my parking session. So for me, that's a useful personalization. As we continue to build that sort of personalization, that sort of location-aware personalization into apps, which of course, mobile is the fastest growing market of all, people are going to just start to expect smartphones to do that stuff, right? And then that helps with the acceptance of personalized marketing in general.
Yeah, and I think it reduces friction too, right? Because if you're giving them that experience and they don't have to enter in a zip code or something, then they've streamlined the experience and they're getting the information faster.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, let's just open up our first poll. What we want to do is just ask a question of our audience, and we're going to pop that vote up for you now. We want to know, how does your company use personalization today? Now, we've got a number of options for you. The first option is we don't. If you don't use personalization today, choose that option. If you don't use personalization but you plan to, that's answer B. If you're using basic personalization, like the sort of stuff we talked about in question 1, using somebody's name, maybe in just one channel, then choose option C. Option B is where we say we insert dynamic personalized content. That's for personalized websites, or where you're building emails where all of the elements are actually personalized, not just the name, but all of the content. And if you are one of those people using advanced multi-channel personalization across all of your different channels, maybe even hyper-personalization one-to-one, then you want to choose answer E. So how does your company use personalization? We'll leave that up on the screen just for a few more moments. And if we're looking at the results, we can see that, a good number of you so far, 44% are using basic personalization. Great to see 22% of you not using it but planning to. In fact, 0% so far are not using personalization at all. Also great to see that a decent number of you are using dynamic personalized content, and a decent number of you are using advanced multi-channel personalization. So really interesting. We'll leave that up just for a few more moments to get a few more votes through the door. Whilst we look at that, we're going to move on into the final section. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into Andrew Jones's study, and we're going to then ask our third question. We've got another poll question for you later, and then we'll get into the general Q&A. So let's go ahead and close the vote for now. Thank you everybody for taking part, and let's take a look at some of the results. So, case studies wise, the people that are out there doing this right now, the people that are out there that are very much like the 17% of you that are using advanced multi-channel personalization. Those people are seeing great results. Microsoft dropped their bounce rates by 35% and increased their add-to-cart rate by 10%. Now, when Microsoft increased add-to-cart rate by 10%, that's pretty significant. That's a serious amount of money. If I were to do that, then of course that would be around about an extra $2 in my bank account, so not so impressive. O'Neill increased conversions by 46% using web personalization and doing some very smart stuff there. Alex and Annie saw a 73% lift in monthly email revenue through using dynamic personalized emails. And GameStop saw a 41% increase in average order value using personalization on their site too. But what's important is Andrew found that the speed that you deliver these personalizations is pretty important. The marketers that he looked at and the data that he looked at said that 38% of them were delivering these kinds of personalizations in real time. And as you push through the different time zones there, within a 10-minute delay, 12% were doing that, 10 minutes to an hour, 15% were doing that, and then it starts to peter off. What's clear and what's important here is that the speed of personalization has a very big result on the actual return. If 1 is very, very low impact and 5 is incredibly high impact, what he noted was that 35%, 17% and 25% respectively scored 3, 4, or 5 in terms of speed of personalization. There's a direct correlation between getting that personalization out there in real time or very quickly and the results it produces. Now, that could be down to all sorts of different factors. It could be down to the fact that people in general these days have lower attention spans, and that could be driving this need to drive things very, very quickly from the marketing point of view and perspective. And, that is certainly one view. Digital natives generally are driving people to do everything quicker, faster, more now. And, that's important as well. Digital natives, they're an important marketplace. I think, we all agree on that. But is this speed of delivery issue being driven by them and other consumers that are expecting everything super fast, quick, and now? Or is this speed of delivery really just something that is being driven by marketers and the increased use of marketing technology in order to drive those messages faster? Maybe I'll pitch that out to Sam straight away and see what your thoughts are, Sam.
Sure. I mean, I think it's probably both. The question is, it's probably the digital natives which are driving the technology to be more responsive and support that need, but ultimately the availability of that technology and the technologies that are there enable people to deliver personalization faster. So, I think it really just comes down to, it's not one or the other, it's probably both driving each other.
And
yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Okay, carry on, Tom. Carry on, jump in.
No, I was just going to say that I completely agree. I think it's one really driving the other. And at the end of the day, I think it's less important who's driving it and more important where it's going. At the end of the day, marketers love automation and they love everything to do with just finding a fast and quick way to personalize stuff. So I've seen over the years that a lot of marketers will try many tools and kind of run ahead and do many kind of utilize different kind of behavioral elements in order to personalize a user journey. And it really is kind of a battle of, when do you go overboard? When are you not really delivering something that's personal? It's just run after something that's automatic and technology. Right.
And, how much of this is being driven by the kind of, we talked about mobile earlier. How much of this speed is being driven by mobile and by apps where, we're kind of expecting an instantaneous personalized response within the app, as opposed to, the old way of doing things where we'd be quite happy to wait for things to be delivered to us.
I can chime in on that. I mean, I think mobile is obviously driving everything faster, and the on-demand consumer and web user is really becoming more and more accustomed to that, with the ability for faster, more responsive, mobile experiences. I would say that it's, I don't know if I could quantify how much of it's driving it, but it's definitely contributing. I think it'd be hard to say it isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting looking at Andrew's report and looking at the data that he found from a vendor standpoint, comparing and contrasting that with how consumers feel about personalization. One of the things that we found for sure in the data is that, up to certain points, people are really happy to actually give up personally identifiable information, as long as they know they're doing that for some kind of guaranteed return. That guaranteed return, we talked about the launcher on Android that changes automatically based upon what I'm doing and where I am. And that for me is a big return for what I'm giving up, which is a very small piece of information in order to be able to use that launcher. And it's similar with things like, Google Photos. I don't mind that Google Photos are using my information in a way that is personally identifiable, because I can now search for all the pictures of cats I've ever taken by just searching for cats, and it's using image recognition to group those all together for me. I don't mind.
How many photos of cats do you have?
My clips. Oh, many. In in fact, I've had to outsource viewing of cat videos to a small team in China just to save me 3 hours a day. But the fact they create movies for me from a weekend away, and they understand that I went somewhere on a journey, I took lots of photos while I was there, and then I came back, and so they put that into a movie with a map and all of the photos and movies in between, and set it out in a really nice way so that becomes a story. I don't mind that because I'm getting a lot of value from that, and that's what consumers in general were telling us about giving up their personal information, and a lot of that was driven by the digital natives. They were absolutely adamant that that's what they want, and they don't really mind giving up their personal information in return for this kind of delivery, and they want it real time. They absolutely must have it real time. So we've got our second poll. Let's just open up our second poll. This one's really quick and easy. So we'd love to know, true or false, here's a statement for you. Do you feel you could be providing better, more relevant, personalized content than you are right now? Just answer true or false. This is the first time we've done a straight true or false poll. We're really interested to see the results of this one. Do you think you could be providing better, more relevant, personalized content? We're just going to leave that up there for a few moments. Let as many of you vote as is humanly possible. So far, what's really interesting is that there's not a single one of you, you inquisitive, brilliant marketers, that actually thinks they're doing everything they possibly can. There's now one person who has it all figured out, so congratulations to you. That's really great. It's great to see that you want to be providing better, more personalised, more relevant personalised content. We're going to move into the general Q&A, and I've been looking at the questions that are coming in, and you are an outstanding audience. Thank you incredibly for all of those brilliant questions. I'm going to hand back right now to Wendy Schuchart, who's going to take us through some of those.
Thanks, Stewart, and thanks, Talia and Sam. I've been really enjoying the content so far, as well as live tweeting using #VBWebinar. So if audience, if you want to have your question, you can ask it on questions in the webinar portal, or you can live tweet it. I'm watching VB Webinars hashtag as well. So first question out there is, thank you, audience, for you've been filling all of our question boxes so fast all throughout the webinar. First question comes from an audience member, and I'm going to start with Stewart. How do you balance the fine line between privacy and personally identifiable information? Most companies have privacy policies that require that you have valid business reasons to collect PII. You can't just collect it because you think you might want it at some point. So Stewart, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll move to Talia and Sam.
Yeah, and this is a hot topic for me. I see a lot of technology all of the time. I get a lot of pitches to write articles about all sorts of amazing marketing technology, and sometimes I'll pass on a pitch because I just don't think that the people behind that technology, and I will feed this back to them, have thought about that issue enough before they've gone to market. It's really, really important that we're incredibly transparent and clear with our customers, whether they be consumers or other businesses, depending on whether you're a B2C or B2B type of organization. It's incredibly important that we're transparent with them about what we're gathering and why we're gathering it and how we're going to use that information. And that's deeply important. Now, a lot of times, of course, apps and web apps and software solutions will put all of this information into an incredibly complicated terms and conditions, which you will just click next, or you'll scroll down to the bottom and choose accept, or whatever is the mechanism for getting you into the application. It will be in there, and they will be explaining to you how they're going to use your information. But of course, none of us ever read these things, do we? We all just go, yep, accept, and I'm in. And then as long as that app, or as long as that piece of software, or as long as that solution is giving me the value I want in return for the data I've given, then I'm happy. It's when that app or software or service oversteps the mark and does something that I think is maybe a bit creepy or a bit wrong, that's when I might dig into the thing that I clicked accept on, and all of a sudden I'll become enraged. Now, that you might think is the problem of the consumer not reading the terms and conditions properly, or the customer not reading the terms and conditions properly. I feel differently. I feel that we, and I'm using the we to mean vendors and everybody that's creating products and services out there, just need to be really transparent and honest about what we're gathering, why we're gathering it, and what it's going to be used for, because then you won't get enraged people out there potentially causing reputational damage for your business when it becomes a story on a news site that, you know, all of your content is now owned by them, for example, and they can use it however they like, which is, you know, something that that has happened over time. You know, we've even seen people using people's pictures in advertising without their permission, but it actually was with their permission because it was in the terms and conditions. But the backlash that caused is reputational damage backlash. And so it just pays to be really open, upfront, and transparent with the people that are using your product or service from the get-go, and that's the answer.
I actually want to chime in, maybe. Oh, sorry.
No, please.
I was going to chime in actually from the other direction of the consumer, because I think you put it in so eloquently. I really have nothing to add in terms of the company, because I think that businesses, just as you said, they should be so transparent and true, because at the end of the day, and this is something that I preach a lot, specifically even with email marketing, you want to have that unsubscribe button front and center, because you don't want people who aren't real users. You want to have real data, you want to have real clients, you want to have real customers. So you want to put all the relevant information front and center so people can decide what to do and what not to do. In terms of the consumer, this is more of like a tip or something. I'm not sure how much you can be utilized, but one of Cialdini's principles is the commitment and consistency. And it's something that we're not really aware of as people. And I think that when you start getting this understanding of who we are and how we react to things, we might be able to stop for a second and ask ourselves the question why we're actually doing it. You know, they say the biggest lie that has ever been told is, I have read and agreed to this, the terms and conditions, because none of us actually read them. And what Cialdini actually says is that as humans, we like to maintain a consistent self-image of ourselves. So we like to be consistent. So when we make an internal or public commitment about something, we tend to follow through with it and to preserve our self-image. So once we actually click that submit button of, yes, I agree to the terms and conditions, you actually kind of, there's the psychological trigger that it makes you commit to take the next steps. So it's always kind of a good idea to maybe stop and ask yourself, have you actually read the terms and conditions, or are you aware of your privacy? And I know this is probably, quite a large topic and maybe a bit general, but just to give you guys an idea of how to kind of think about these things when you're agreeing to them. So, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you, Talia. I've actually heard about that study too. It's kind of crazy. Sam, what do you think?
I think Stewart and Talia really have covered all the key points of this topic. I mean, it really comes down to honesty, transparency, and trust with the consumer. They're giving you all of those things when they share their personal information with you, and that can be as much as a first name or down to phone number and address and payment information. And you, as the receiver of that information, have established a level of trust and honesty with them that you have to execute on. So I think with any personalization technology or personalization strategy that you put in place, you want to always keep that front and center on what are the risks, how am I going to make sure that I'm not just delivering the best experience and the best, most optimal personalized experience to my visitor, but am I honoring my commitment to keep their trust and make sure that I'm doing it in a way that's responsible?
Well said, Sam. Thank you. And Sam, I'm going to stay with you. We have a question from the audience. You had mentioned that you can't get down to a true one-to-one level of personalization. Why not?
Well, it's definitely not that you can't, and I think that's obviously the goal, and probably what everyone, including ourselves, set out to do when we do personalization. You can't always do it with every consumer or every shopper was really my point there. And it just comes down to how much information you have. So when we see a new visitor come to us for the first time, we know very little about them other than maybe some information that we can collect based on their browser type or geographic region from IP address. So my point was you have to work with what you have, and when there's no reason why you can't personalize at the highest level of the funnel there. And as you get and collect and learn more about individuals, you can then begin to personalize all the way down to the one-to-one level, and you certainly can, and that's the goal.
Well said.
Yeah, and that does depend on what type of business you are as well. It's a lot harder to get to one-to-one personalization in a B2C e-commerce environment, especially if you're dealing with millions of customers, than it is in a small business B2B organization where maybe you've got 50 people in your pipeline at any one time. Having said that, we still end up with an interesting dichotomy. Andrew, in his study, found that the vast majority of reasons why people want to use personalization are to fill the top of the funnel. The problem with that is that the top of the funnel is where people are still anonymous, and so you can't really personalize to them. It's a really strange situation whereby marketers want personalization to fill the top of the funnel, but you can't use personalization to fill the top of the funnel because people are anonymous at that point. The sensible route is exactly what Sam suggested, which is you start with the information you can get, and then you progressively profile over time to get more and more information from those people that are actually really interested in you. And then you're doing one-to-one personalization, but for the people that actually care enough about your product or service to have given you that extra additional information. So you maybe can't get to one-to-one on everybody, but you can get to one-to-one on the people that you care about the most.
Well said, Stewart. Thank you. And Stewart, let's take a look at that poll that we've got going out there. It looks like there's a very few people, 6% of our audience in the live event, have figured out the secret to providing the relevant, personalized content, while 94% of our audience is still trying to refine and get better. Does that surprise you, Stewart?
It doesn't, and it's in line with Andrew's results in terms of how many marketers he spoke to that feel confident that they can do personalization at this point, that they've got the infrastructure in place, that they have single customer record. It's very much in line with the sort of back office results of Andrew's studies and survey. And it doesn't surprise me that we want to get better, not just from that perspective, but also from the perspective of marketers, and having been one for a while. We're naturally inquisitive. We naturally want to get better all the time. We naturally want to incrementally improve everything we do to produce the best possible results. So I'm not surprised that most people want to do better because it's in our nature as marketers.
Well said. Thanks, Stewart. I have a question for the panel, and I'm going to start with Talia. When can we use personalization? Is it just after someone has made a purchase and we have all their data, or can we utilize it along the funnel to increase conversion rates? Can you talk a little bit about that, Talia?
Sure. I think it's actually a very nice question, following what Stewart was just saying, that sometimes you just don't have the data in order to start personalizing. So personalization in my, the way I do it isn't just about finding the behavioral element. Okay, I have the name, now I can do it. There's a lot of different ways you can do it throughout the funnel. You don't have to have just the name. It depends on the traffic source. So, for example, if people are coming from social media, if you have Facebook ads, personalization could be showing them their friends who have already liked your product. You have these boxes that said, these people have already liked it. Here's a few of your friends, and recognizing those people who are friends of yours. Personalization could also be recognizing the geographical location of a customer who has arrived from Chicago to your website and say, "Good morning, Chicago," or "We ship to Chicago." So it's not the personalized, I know exactly who you are, but it's these small things that help you feel, that it's personalized. It could also be retargeting. For example, so a person has gone into my website, left it. Now I can follow them around. I mean, I think a lot of traveling companies do this very well, kind of creepy too, but interesting. So I search for flights to London on a certain date, and then you go to another website and it says, "Are you still looking for flights to so-and-so and this and these dates?" So it's a nice way of showing personalization and also kind of tracking. So there are a lot of different ways where you can show personalization without actually having these amazing tools, of actually knowing and having the email. Because obviously in email, yes, it's easy because, okay, we have a mailing list, we have the people, great. Now let's, say, "Hi, Ben, this is an email for you." But there's also two different things that you can do in order to personalize stuff for your customers. And the first step is going to be profiling your users and building personas. And this is kind of more marketing 101. But when you start profiling your users and when you kind of build their personas, you're going to have about 4 or 5 different personas, and you're going to know, in general, who they are, their name, so not their exact name, but you're going to know what they like, what they don't like, where they are in the journey, what they do for a living, what they love, and what kind of triggers them. And once you know that, you can personalize the experience. It doesn't have to be, again, with the name. It can just be with writing and using the right copy. And that is the second step, making it about the customer. So it's not about you, and it's not about how your product is amazing and how your features and pricing are fantastic, but it's about how they're going to achieve a change in their life, and how your product is going to help them become better people, a better person. So it's kind of more marketing high level, but that is also another way of personalizing things without needing the actual technical data. And people don't really like hearing this because it involves a lot of research and sitting down and writing strategies and stuff. But if you have that, and you have those profiles and the personas, and you have this way of kind of understanding who your customer is in general, you can actually create a better user journey and a more personalized user journey, if that makes sense, and I haven't kind of gone off topic.
No, you're fine. We do have Sam, we have time for a quick comment from you. Any other thoughts to add for Talia's?
I totally agree with what Talia said there. I mean, I think it's absolutely something that can be used high up in the funnel all the way down to the conversion. You can do it on-site, off-site, through outreach and communications. There's a variety of different elements. So, yeah, I mean, it certainly is. It comes down to building those profiles, and it's all part of the holistic personalization strategy. Thanks,
Sam. And Stewart, how about you?
Just looking at Andrew's report and the model that he surveyed, 20% of them are using personalization at the top of the funnel to help reach new prospects. 32% are educating prospects, moving them into leads. 20% are using it in the middle for lead nurturing. 9% for nurturing sales qualified leads and opportunities, and 19% for converting opportunities to customers. It's pretty clear that you can use personalization, and people are using personalization at every point in the funnel. Everything from just using their name after they've signed up maybe to your launch website in every follow-up email, all the way through to retail environments where they've downloaded the app, created an account, and you're now tracking them with a beacon through your store, and when they dwell in front of a particular item for more than 1 minute, you send them a voucher for the product you want to push on that aisle. All the way from start to finish, A to Z, you can use personalization right through the funnel.
Excellent. And unfortunately, guys, we're out of time, so thank you so much to Stewart Rogers from VentureBeat, Talia Wolf from Conversioner, and Sam Wolf from Lucky Vitamin. This has been 4 Ways Personalization Will Improve Your Marketing Campaign, brought to you by VentureBeat Insight and Autopilot. Just a reminder to our audience, if you click on the attachments button up on top, you'll get that free copy of Andrew Jones's report. It's courtesy of Autopilot, our sponsor, and also a copy of today's deck. This webcast will also be available on demand, so you can revisit it at any time, starting about an hour after we're finished recording. Thanks so much for attending today's webcast, and I'm Wendy Schuchert signing off for VentureBeat. This webcast is copyright 2015 by VentureBeat. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted, if that is the case, by VentureBeat Insight and Autopilot, who are solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.